currently recording to the cloud. Welcome to our Syntax and Semantics evening. I'm thrilled to see everyone here. We have a few introductory things. I do have, I hope that's not the attendance link. Let me grab the attendance link for those of you who've come in after I shared that. There it is. Shared lots of things already as people were coming in. And we start a half hour early with people who want to just come in and chat before we start off. So we always do start off with a land acknowledgement, recognizing that my region where I am is on the traditional lands of the Nisqually, Cowlitz, and Puget Sound Salish people. I'm going to put in a couple links into the chat for you. One is of the map where you can see wherever you are. And I invite anyone to add in your own resources or information where you are, or something that you'd like to acknowledge, whether it be land or labor that has contributed to the privilege and the prosperity that we have today. We'll also adjust our muting so everyone is muted upon entry. If it's quiet behind you, we don't really mind, but if there are noises that are distracting, I'll mute you. We also recognize that acknowledgement is but a first step. It does not stand in for relationship and action, but it can begin toward deeper possibilities for decolonizing relationships with people and place. I also will bring in an acknowledgement from my OSPI partners of the pain and trauma over, sorry, I need to adjust this. It says of these past months, but that was during the Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Michael, all the other situations that were going on. But nonetheless, I will take this down when things are better for everyone, won't I? So it is a pledge to stand with our communities of color, especially those who identify as or are categorized as African American. And I have some celebrating Black History Month resources, even though it's not Black History Month. We should keep it going all year round and always be learning about each other, shouldn't we? So that is in the chat box for you. This is also a recognition of those who identify both as persons of color and of individuals with disabilities, which, as you noticed in our introduction slides that we were looking at from the Dyslexic Black Alliance. Oh, thank you for reminding me, whoever put that closed caption on. We'll add our captions, show captions for people who are watching this afterwards. So let me just show captions. There we go. All right, it is work dismantling systemic racism and disrupting ableist structures. Okay, so I do have some Zoom tips for whoever might be new, and requests for those of you who are with us already is to please put your name and your district as your Zoom. If you are not able to, please put it into the chat box and I will go ahead and fix it for you. Amy, it looks like you're driving. Let's see, I don't think I have you in my notes. My apologies, but I can fix it for you if you just want to tell me what district you're with.
Cedar-Woolley.
Cedar-Woolley. I will write it down next time so you won't have to worry about that. I hope I'm spelling it correctly. Cedrowoolley?
S-E-D.
Oh, that's right. Cedar with an S. There we go. Okay. So if you are able to do that on your own, you can access it by going to the participants list on your toolbar. When you click that, you go find your name, and next to it, you see where it says more. There's a mute option there. There's more, and you can then rename yourself there. There's the mute button for unmuting to contribute. Please do at any point in time. There is a reaction button, which is where you will find your electronic raising hand, because unless you're one of, I think I can see 7 people right now, I won't see you do this. So I can see Janice, Katrina, Allison, Jill, Laura, Danielle, Amy. I could scroll over to see the others. But when you talk, it brings you up toward the main group. Okay. Other things on those, these will fade away. If you raise hand, you can lower, and I can as well. We also have engagement via annotations that I will be inviting you to do. And to do that, you click the view options, and then when you click the little pencil that says annotate, it will bring up this toolbar. where you can see you can use mouse text, or the mouse will just be texting or drawing or stamping. And then if this little button here will change the color of whatever you're writing with or drawing with. We do have guideposts that I try to use to be explicit to help indicate when there are practical strategies, something that you could use tomorrow, handouts that you could print up and take away, engagement activities, reflection time, and resources are websites. So practical strategy here, of course, is that our kids with dyslexia and those who struggle to read and write, particularly those with learning disabilities, really benefit from having one, routines, but two, a visual as well as auditory. It gives them a reminder and it helps keep them on track of what we're doing, us as well. All right, so I always start with just a refresher of our teaching and learning beliefs so that you can see what brings me to my work. This used to be a list that my teaching and learning department gave me, and I bolded the words that stood out and that were important to me. So I invite you just to take a moment. I should give you a little engagement opportunity here, but I haven't put that on yet. To say what stands out to you? Which ones do you connect with, or what speak to you tonight? I see a couple of stars for quality teaching and growth mindset. And when we come to courageous leadership, we're all leaders, aren't we? You are all leaders because you are teachers, and teachers, the whole point of education, the root of, we were talking more last week about morphology, the root of educate is DUC, which means to lead. So an educator is a leader. We've got seen talking about building relationships, that quality teaching, active engagement. Something want to add something in orally? Amy, since you can't contribute.
Growth mindset.
Oh, that I'll just stamp for you. Thanks on that. I have to put my stamps up here for us. All right. Thank you for the contributions, everyone. Let me put on hers for growth mindset. There's always more to learn, isn't there? Always opportunities. Okay, I'll give you about 5 more seconds to engage, and then I'll clear everything off. You notice, of course, that I put the word all in red because that's really what drives me in what I do. For me, I believe that all kids can learn to read, and I believe all teachers can support that growth and help teach them. But we all need the tools, don't we? All right, we're going to clear all that off. And we're going to talk about our goals today and throughout this series. So today we're specifically zoning in or going to zone in on our syntax. But you can see we've talked about orthography, the sound symbol connections. We talked about etymology a little bit, but not as much as I would have liked, but we can always come back to that. Morphology was last week. In fact, I'm going to bring this up with the agenda so we can see where we've been and where we're going on the next lesson, the outline. But this is especially for those of you who are new. You can see kind of just what we're searching for and gaining for. And of course, the strategy here is when we know where we're going, we have a goal, we know the steps that we're going to try and take to get there. So here's where we've been. And you can see last time we talked about growth morphology, and there was a request before we got started to talk a little bit more. And that's what this opportunity to engage here is all about. And this chat feature is I'm going to open the floor to ask if there's anybody else who would like to kind of talk through some of the pieces or kind of get a little bit more about morphemes, because it's dense, and it's something that I will be honest. This is probably the newer part for me is morphemes. I would say, well, granted, it's been nearly 20 years, but nonetheless, this is a place where you can constantly learn. There's always more to learn when it comes to morphemes because it's the building blocks of vocabulary. And so, of course, that's a place where there's always more to learn. So I was sharing earlier that I went to a great session virtually by Louisa Moats. Let me grab my mouse here. And luckily for you, it is available on YouTube. So I'm going to not play it right now, but I will put it into the chat box for you. And so that you can watch it on your own. But I do have some screenshots that I took from it that I'll just share.
It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr.
That's what I-
Lisa Moats. She has been a teacher, psychologist, researcher, graduate school faculty member.
There we go. Problem is I clicked it twice. So some of the things that I grabbed from it that I wanted to bring attention to when we're talking about morphemes, though, let's see, I probably zipped back up to the top. I did scroll down earlier. So she talks a lot about sound symbol correspondences and the richness and the beauty of our language. This was a fun one when it comes up, that where she talked about etymology a little bit and the origins of our language. Let me make it a little bit bigger as we're talking together. And we talked about, so this is one thing we didn't have time last time to talk about, the language of origin and talk about, Amy, I'm going to mute you. There's a little bit of background noise. There we go. I think it's not working. I don't know what. Okay. Nonetheless, so we talked about the language of origin, how you can see that in some of the pieces that are used. So for example, in number 1, the reason why I knew that was Greek was because the PH, making a f, is Greek. You see that in digraph and logographic. And the Y as a vowel in dyslexia, that's a Greek as well. And the ology, that's Greek. Number 2, Latin. Some of the aura is the auditory. That's, you can see some of the chunks that are very Latin in those. 3, obviously French with that unique and petite machine. So you can see some French influence on there. And then AS is the Anglo-Saxon, the Old English in the older words down here. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because to the morphology. And oh, here we go. This is a great one. When we talk about the word misspelled, 2 syllables, morphemes, we have miss, which is, it means incorrect. And we have spell, which is the action, and we have the ed, which puts it into the past. So that's the 3 morphemes. And then, of course, the 7 morphemes, the phonemes, the sounds. And I love the question of, why the 2 S's? Well, because the base word was spell and your prefix is miss. Why the 2 L's? Remember, last time we talked about doubling the L when we added the suffix ed. No, sorry, spell already had it. Here's one. I'm trying to do 2 things at once. Spell already had 2 L's, and that was because of the floss rule. Remember the FLS or Z, if you have a single syllable word that ends in a FLS or Z after a single vowel. She only refers to it as just FSL, but we know the Z does as well. So anyway, we wanted to jump to the morphology. And I love this. Does this look familiar? We talked about this last time. Understanding it's complex, but the free morphemes, those are just words. And bound morphemes can't stand alone as a whole word. So we have some types of suffixes. We talked about these last time as well. We didn't go into the different past tense inflectional suffix ed, but I love looking at this when you look at matched, preferred, invented. Notice those 3 different sounds of ed. So much you could explore with morphemes. I never had heard this before. Why is it naked instead of baked? Or why is it not naked and baked? Naked is an individual morpheme. It's only 1 morpheme, isn't it? Baked is 2. Can you not hear me, Katrina? All right, I hope we're okay. So nonetheless, I invite you to explore this video a lot more on your own. If I click that, it probably is going to start. No, it didn't. Okay. We did a lot last time, didn't we? So who would like to? Yes, all those slides are on the YouTube. The attendance, I'll put that back in. So is there anybody who wants to talk through your understanding about morphemes, questions you had? We did so much last week, and I know it was really, really dense and a lot. So I'm just going to pause for a moment and see if there's somebody who wanted to process or ask a specific question about morphemes. Or syllables, anything we've done up to this point. Nice giveaway time. I can also give one more great example that I saw another one that I'd be happy to share with you if we want to. Was a core webinar that's on YouTube. And Carrie Thomas Beck used a great example of the word water and the word paper. How many morphemes in the word water, everyone? Hold up a number of fingers. Those of you I can see. Water, how many morphemes? How many units of meaning? Janice, you've got it. One, just one in water. I think, Laura, you were thinking phonemes? Yeah, just one unit of meaning though, right? How about paper? Just one. How about painter? Danielle, what are they?
Hopefully I'm right. The paint is the root, and then the is actually telling that isn't a person that paints.
You're totally right, Danielle. Exactly. So notice how water and paper both have an ER, but they're a single morpheme. Whereas painter is two morphemes because you've got their base word paint, and you've added that suffix ER on. Just like when she had the baked, baked and naked. Baked is the past tense of bake, whereas naked is a single morpheme. That ed is not a suffix in that case. Another one I often use with my kids would be finger. It's not someone or something that things, it's one morpheme. ER is not a suffix all the time. ING is not a suffix all the time. And the word sing, it's not a suffix. So you have to be careful when you're pulling off those suffixes, whether or not it really is a suffix. And whether or not what you have left is a base word, like you did it, Danielle, taking off the ER and painter and making that. Does that help for those of you who had questions coming into morphemes? What we're talking about. Okay. Let's, we do have at least one person, perhaps two, who are new. I should have asked you whether or not you've ever had any classes with me. I'll do a real brief introduction. I'll give you a moment to put something into the chat box or the Jamboard, which I'll put into the chat for you right now. Where you can share out where you're from, what brings you here. Oh, I added stretched out my pictures. I saw some more faces. Hello to all of you. Okay, so there's our Jamboard, and I'll bring it up. If you have never used Jamboard before, let me do a quick illustration of that for you. And show you how you can add on something about where you are. And then later on, you'll have opportunities to engage with some of the activities in there as well. Of course, things have to not go so slowly. I'll have to close out some of the other things I have going on in my backgrounds. Okay, so here's our first jam frame. Here's a map where you can tell us where you're from. And you can also, if you want to add on what you do onto that as well. And then there's also a place here for parking lot for questions or ideas. Someone's trying to do a P for parking lot. I can appreciate that. And just any thoughts, questions that you want to draw in. You notice I'm using an eraser here. There's a drawing, and here's how you add in a sticky note with any thoughts, questions, or ideas. Okay, so back to our introduction slide. I'd like to shift up the pictures a little bit. That picture at the top is from the 70th Annual International Dyslexia Conference with some of our Washington peeps. We have a few, in fact, everybody there is from Washington or lives here now. Down in the lower left-hand corner is my Slingerland mentor, Myrna Soul, and Ladera Horn, who is an individual with dyslexia, who is a public speaker, renowned poet. And on the right is the Washington Reading Corps. That's Era Jackson with me, who used to be the ELA director at OSPI. I have been passionately doing this work with the ESD for over 7 years now. I started off at a school for kids with dyslexia, taught elementary there, went on to middle school special education, as well as high school special education. And I was a professor of special education for 7 years as well. So a bit eclectic, but lots of different perspectives, including the parent perspectives that I bring because I have a daughter with dyslexia and a son with autism. So it contributes to all of what I bring to this work. One last pre-start is we have requests of how we engage with each other. So I ask that you please stay engaged. You listen to each other and to ourselves, and you listen to learn. I forgot about that one. I like that. Share openly, expect and accept non-closure, use tech to enhance our learning, and give ourselves and each other grace. If there's something that you think we need to add to this, please put it into the chat. I hope this covers most of what we need in order to help us with each other. All right, so today we're going to be talking about syntax and fluency, because syntax is the bridge to fluency. So what do I mean by that? Is that you can be fluent in reading individual words and word lists, but that doesn't get you to meaning. Now, when you put those words together in phrases and clauses and sentences and larger units, that's what gets you to meaning, is when you are fluent at that. So when we talk about fluency, which I'm not going to spell it out on any of the slides here, but when we talk about fluency, we really talk about three main pieces. One is the accuracy, getting the words right. And that's the biggest first step. And so that's what we've talked about. I'll jump back to our agenda, our outline here. What we talked about in those first sessions up until now is about getting the words right. Figuring it out, what's that word? Morphology is really understanding them a lot, but in first three were really, especially the phonology, sound, symbol, syllables, we had to get that word right. We had to figure out what that word is. So that's the accuracy. That's the most important first step in fluency. The next step, though, is, so I said accuracy. The next one is automaticity, being able to do it without thinking about it. And I can do that with individual words. But then the third piece is with proper expression. Shush. Sorry, I've got a new dog. The proper expression piece relies on me knowing where to pause and where to slow down, where to speed up, where to put the expression in, which means that I need to be able to read not word by word, but phrase by phrase and clause by clause, which is what we're going to be exploring. Okay. So toward that, but before we get started, I'm just going to put us in the right brain just for a bit of fun while I try and get the dog out of here, distracting us. Would you please share something fun that you use for self-care? Well, what's a great movie, TV? Oh, what did you get, dog? Not done. Okay, fine. Let's get you out of here. So put something fun into the chat box for us. Come on, out. Good for that. Come on, out. Someone call Archer, please. Okay. We have one thing that's come in so far. Surely you've got some fun ideas for us. Muppet Christmas Carol. I love it, Trish. Peloton. Val, is that an exercise bike? Oh, Lauren. Looks like some fun things. Awesome. Keep it going. Self-care is so crucial for us right now, isn't it? Guided app meditation. Thank you. Puzzles, breaking. Self-care. Yes. Self-care, entertainment, something to help us as we give ourselves and each other grace. Sometimes it's a matter of taking a deep breath, isn't it? So thank you, because there's so much to do. There's so much going on that we all need that reminder, don't we? Okay, speaking of reminders, before we get into syntax, I just want to remind us about the simple view of reading. If you remember from when we talked about in our first session, that we needed to understand meaning and we needed to understand the code. This is kind of what I was just talking about, wasn't it, when I'm talking about fluency? That you have to be able to get the words off the page, understand what they are, and then put these two together to understand the words, which I thought that was my fading one, sorry, to understand the context in the text. Remember, though, that this is not static within a student. An individual can be strong or weak with their language comprehension, depending on the passage's vocabulary and the syntax. This is where syntax is such a crucial piece that we think about, and actually, frankly, we forget about, because especially if we're thinking about our early learners and we have really basic stories, they don't have complex syntax. But this is something to keep in mind, that written language, what we see in text, is not just oral language written down. We don't Right, exactly the way we talk. We don't use the words like although all that often, or however, or in the case that. There are just different complex or sentence structures that we see in writing or we use in writing that we don't use in our speech. So we need to keep that in mind when we're talking about the relationship between speech and print. So I mentioned that this can be static within a student. I just want to share what this looks like for an individual. So this is our typical reader child who has a book at his level, and he is strong with his listening comprehension. If you said it to him, he's with you. He can follow along. His word reading comprehension is fine, his word reading ability. So his reading comprehension is strong. But if I gave him a book where he doesn't understand the words, or he doesn't understand those syntactical structures, he's going to struggle with understanding the text, won't he? Even though he can sound out all the words. Same thing as if you gave me a book on protein kinases or engineering. I don't know those words. I don't know how they're being used. I have a great example of this where I give a list of words to the participants. I say, okay, everyone knows all these words, right? Now I'm going to put it into a sentence for you where you don't know the background knowledge. They're used in ways that you don't understand, and people struggle on it unless they have a mathematical background. So then, of course, it's our kids with dyslexia typically have weak word reading, not the language comprehension. And for them, giving them auditory text would really help them out. Okay, that's a bit of background. Let's jump into the syntax. Let's start with warming up. Name those terms, those letters, S and P, VP, D, and N. Does anybody know what any of those stand for, or V? Just to see let's kind of look at pre-assessment, put them into the chat box, or you can add it onto the annotation if you prefer that's more anonymous. Thanks, Therese. Okay. Jillian started us off with noun and verb. So we do, the subject, Trish, would be this one. We don't have that labeled. That would be this here. Not the S that you see above. Robin's got it. S at the top is a sentence. Keep us going. This was noun, this was verb. The D is a hard one that I don't really care whether or not you know, but we'll see if anybody, depending on our stretch there. Noun phrase, there we go, Kathy. Well, we've got two noun phrases, don't we? Well, here's another noun. Janice, that's a great question, a dative. It's actually called a determiner. I haven't heard the term dative in a long time. The determiners would be your pronouns, your your pronouns like that or this, or your articles like a, an, and the. No worries. Thank you, Devin. Let's see who came up with another one. D is for the determiner. And V, there we go, is verb phrase. Stretching out a little bit. So the determiners, like I said, I don't really care if you know those or not, but I wanted to pull us into just stretch for some, review for and some of those as well. I think I went way too quickly to talk about on syntax and phrases when we looked at our survey, and actually I do have it here in the link. We had 42 of you respond to the survey, and those of you who are new, I will put it into the chat box if you haven't. But I think it's always great for us to have a reminder of the fact that we do have a really heterogeneous group. We have strengths and needs all around. We don't have anybody really feeling confident about this. And frankly, we don't spend enough time in my mind talking about grammar. There's so much more we could do. All right, so let's talk about why is syntax important. This is from Louisa Moat's most recent book, but she also, I'm sure, had something similar in her previous versions as well. Feel free to highlight that, Janice. I see you're working on that. But it's our overall proficiency with the academic language, so that's our vocabulary, that we talked about last time with morphemes, but it's also our ability to interpret complex or literary syntax that becomes more and more highly correlated with reading comprehension starting in our older grades. Because as I said, in the younger grades, the sentences are pretty simple, aren't they? They get a lot more complex as our kids get older. So it's as they get older that we really need to be paying attention to those. Let me change this to my vanishing pen. There we go. All right, so when I'm talking about syntax, what am I talking about? I'm talking about how words work together. And when it, for example, when you saw a noun phrase, even if the noun phrase could be the girl, it's two words. It could even be girls. It's a noun phrase. It's one or more words working together to serve a purpose, to do a job. And they answer these questions. Now, notice my color coding is I would have my noun phrases I'm trying to change my colors here. My noun phrases tell me who is the subject sentence about? Who is this passage about? What is this passage about? My who's and my what's are my nouns. Versus my verbs are my did what, doing what. Tell me, these are my actions, my states of beings. My adverbs tell me where or when or how much. My adjectives tell me which one, what kind, how many. And then my phrases and clauses put together, we can use to put together to say why. Why is this happening? Why do I do it? So these are, if you remember when we talked about content and function words, when we talked about morphology last time, remember that the content words are your adjectives, adverbs, nouns, and verbs. Those are the ones that contain meaning, whereas your function words are the glue words, like your prepositions, like your pronouns, like your articles, the a, an, and the. They hold things together, but they're really kind of complicated to explain to kids. So remember I said they do a job. I'm going to give you a moment, and I want you to think about how would I describe these to kids? How would I help my kids figure out what a noun is, what a pronoun is, what jobs do they do? And then we're going to talk about why I'm using the word jobs instead of parts of speech. So I'm going to give you a moment to think about, choose one, how would you describe it? And then I'm going to show you how I do on the next slide, as well as give you a resource and show you where a handout is. Janice, you've got the noun, who or what the sentence is about. Who or what is the action exactly? Or it could be the object of that preposition. I'm talking to you. Whom? To whom am I talking? I'm talking to you. So that's the pronoun, or that green. So let me I'm going to put in the chat box the link to get to the handout, and then I'll take you there. So let me and I'll also show you on that handout where we are on this. So actually, let me jump in here. Because the handout that I'm going to refer you to, it's the Franken handout, and it's from when I did a presentation for kids who are in older grades, but nonetheless, it's got your parts of speech here on this. Oh, it's taking you right there. Nice. Nope, that's not mine. My apologies. We're going to go to the structured literacy resources, which if you are new, I will make sure you get this link into the chat box for you. And we're going to follow it. This is one that I found that it was just nice. So maybe this goes along with what you were saying, that noun, who or what, verb. I thought these were useful. I always find new resources to share. Let me grab this for us. Put it into the chat and follow it. So this is all of our resources, and we're going to actually follow our handouts. So as I said, there's a handout to take with you. And we're going to go down to the Franken handouts. because my colleague was Kate Franken. And we're going to scroll down past some familiar things that we've already talked about. Oh, that wasn't a clickable one, did it? I'll fix that as it's twirling for you. Let me grab that link. Copy URL in the chat. There we go. All right. So we're going to scroll down past, remember the syllables we talked about a couple weeks ago? And here are the spelling rules we worked on last week. And some orthographic conventions we talked about when we talked about orthography. And here are some grammar questions that I would give my students and put these on my wall to help them find those. That noun, as Janice, you said who or what. That pronoun, who or what. Verb, did what, doing what. You can see our adverbs, when. So I could also have for my kids a more descriptive version, which I did click. There we go. Would you give them something like these? It describes a noun and it tells us more. Some examples there. Take the place of a noun, that action, that state of being, prepositions, interjections. Knowing this what is one piece, you probably could have explained these. How we use them is the next step, isn't it? So remember I said that we're calling these roles or jobs, not labels. So here's where I'm going to ask you.
They should be in that bowl above the piano.
There we go. Sorry, Laura. Okay. So I'm going to give you a moment to see if you can use each of these words or any one of these words in 3 different ways. Could you use it as a noun? Actually, all of these can be used as a noun, can be used as an adjective, can be used as a verb. So see if you can come up with 3 sentences for any one of those words. One where you're using it as a noun, one where you're using it as an adjective, one where you're using it as a verb. So remember we talked about the polysemous nature of our words. Those could have multiple meanings. They could be used in different ways. I'll give you a moment. Okay, Deborah's used jump as a noun there. A ski jump. With ski, you being used as an adjective. You made me jump as a verb. Janice has got a rock as a verb. Can we get someone to do jump as an adjective? I see lots of rock. Rock is, rock solid. There we go. I spotted the dog. A dog has spots. The rocking horse. Nice. Do we have jump as an adjective anywhere? Jumping frog. Jump seat. I like it. So here are the examples that I came up with. Goodness. There we go. A jump shot. What was the other one that you said? The jump what? Jump seat. I like that. I didn't even think about that one with jumping beans. That's great. I'm thinking flying. So notice how these can be used in different ways. I color coded them so you can see the red is the verbs, the green is the nouns, and the orange is the adjectives. Now I will say on that, I'll go back to my color coding, that frankly, these are just the colors that I used, and they are completely, I think it's this one, completely, they started out being random. I've known other programs who use other colors, but I will say that while these were originally random, I did appreciate that once I started teaching my kids handwriting, and I noticed they had an app that said, we follow the rules of the road. We start with green and end with red. So we do the same thing here when we're talking about a sentence, don't we? A sentence has to have at least a noun and a verb. Girls walk. Pigs fly, etc. You have to have the noun, you have to have a verb. So that's why I at least want to keep the red and green. Any other color I don't really care about. All right, so I'm going to give you a moment to talk into, I think we're going next into our breakout reflection upon this, because it is a new way of looking at parts of speech. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time in our breakout. You can talk to people, get a kind of feeling about the syntax. Is this new way of approaching parts of speech? Do you think it'll be useful for your kids? I'm going to pause this recording. Go ahead and resume recording. Let's see if who would like to share for your group some of the things you talked about. Whether, you know, if this was a new perspective, a reminder.
We talked about being able to make it developmentally appropriate, understandable for the different ages, and personally speaking, you know, teaching K through 8, but intervention and what it. I never really thought about, you know, parts of speech and how a first grader might not understand that. I never really thought about that until you said that. And it's like, but they can understand what a job is. They wouldn't know what a role is, but a job. And then being able to take that and have fun with it, you know, create a job, one job per week that everybody gets to contribute to that job. And then as students get to be into that second and third grade, now we can transition into the parts of speech possibly, because that's what they see on standardized testing. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. I appreciate that. Thank you, Trish. Remind me what district you're with?
Archdiocese of Seattle, but I'm not teaching currently.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, it's still important. So thank you for that contribution. That's yeah, and when I said jobs or roles, what term do you want to use? It's going to rewrite for your kids. Thank you on that. Does someone else want to contribute from your group? No one.
Everyone's so quiet this week.
Hi, Deborah.
We
I hope
already Trish spoke for our group. So.
Okay, you were with Trish. Well,
Yeah.
we'll give people another opportunity in a bit, but I wanted to get you active in the moment and so not just talking. Oh, it looks like we might have something coming in chat. The Thursday slump. I know. We'll go back to Tuesdays next week. We had Halloween was our difficult one this time. All right, I'm going to get my timer out on my phone because we're going to do a 30-second brainstorm. We're going to do 2 30-second brainstorms. This is called a 2-minute sentence slam. So Trish, when you're saying, what can I do with my littles? This is also a way to get them, their juices flowing, their ideas going, get them. I mean, one of the most important things we can do with our writers is listing, is brainstorming. So to get them over that hump of, I don't know what to write about. All right, today we're going to do everything. I want you to write about anything you can think about that's green, or we're going to make a list of all the things that cars do, or we're going to make a list of all the things that you might see at a fair. So just kind of getting those things going. You know, one of the most important things we can do is listing. So starting with our youngest learners, if we say, I don't have a lot of time for writing, let's do this 2-minute writing prompt. I want you to have a piece of paper and a pencil. You make 2 columns. The first column, we're going to do all the animals you can think of in 30 seconds. I'm getting my timer out. And then the second column, you're going to, that's not 20 minutes. Hold on, let me fix that. 0 minutes, 30 seconds. And then after you've done that, whoops, pause and restart. After you've done 30 seconds of animals, then your second column is going to be 30 seconds of things animals do. All right. Ready for your first column, your list of animals? Go. See how many you can do. And finish up what you're doing because you're stopped. Your time is up. And now you're going to go to the second column. And you're going to write as many actions that animals do, as many things, as many verbs. Things, sorry, was not the right word. Yeah, as many things they do, actions that you can think of in 30 seconds. Ready? Go. And you want to finish up the word you're writing, and your 30 seconds are up. Okay, now, hopefully you've gotten at least 3, if not more. You're going to now take an animal from column A and an action from column B, and you're going to make some little mini sentences. You might need to add in an article or a suffix if you need to, but you really could do 2-word sentences. That's all we really need. So 45 seconds, see how many sentences you can come up with. Go. And then you have 8 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, take a look and see how successful you were. How many sentences do you have? Did you get some good brainstorming going? Did you get the concept of that you've got a doer and a doing? So maybe pigs fly. I'm kidding. Pigs root if you snort, or dogs bark. Birds fly. So there you go. So now the next thing I would do with my students, and if anybody wants to put a sample and you put it in the chat box of some of your sentences, is let's now think about how do we expand these. So this is teaching reading through writing, is when we're helping them understand, okay, now when we look at these sentences, it's all going to have a doer and a doing, just like you did in these simple sentences you made. We have, and there was one person I saw who was a presenter who did see if I can draw this. I can't draw very well, but nonetheless, let's say this is an apple, or somebody said, can I do it as a pumpkin? And she had people make on one side the subject and the other side the predicate or the verb, whichever you want to use. And then she had them cut it in half for them to visually see. You got to have both people. You have to have the doer, just like we had in our sentences, our animals, and you have to have what they do, that predicate piece. So I'm going to clear all that off. And let's see, I see something coming in. Somebody's giving us a little sentence here. Penguins poop. Now, I love it. Penguins do poop, but notice how Darren's already starting this expansion period. He's added that another clause, whenever, as a dependent subjective pronoun. Whenever they eat fish, we have another subject and verb. So he actually has 2 sentences here that he's squished together by using that whenever. The penguins poop, they eat fish. He uses whenever to make it one, where I have that whenever is telling me about that main piece. Very complex, Darren, not our youngest ones, huh? My dog can meow. Okay, you've given us a modal there with that can. The kitten is sleeping. There's another helping verb there. The dog ran, puts it in the past. Where in the park? You all are jumping to the expansion. So with our kids, we can help them expand them by, here's our sample sentence, my dog herds, my telling me which dog, by first saying, well, tell me more about that dog. Tell me more about that who or what, that namer. What kind of dog is it? How many dogs? Which dog are we talking about? What kind of dog? See if we have anybody that I love these sentences you guys are coming up with. So Lorna's got one, the dog ran in the park. She's tell me where he's running.
So I have a question. So because we're starting to get into tenses now, so how extensive for the little kids? You just delve into it? Because I could see some of the littles, if on my list I picked the word run, I can see some of the little kids saying the dog run,
Yeah.
So how much do you interject at this time? And
so I think that depends on what again, the age level and grade level that you're working with, because there was a great quote I read recently when we're talking about oral language, that if you cannot orally tell a story, you can't write a story. You have to have those oral language skills in order to be able to transfer them to writing. So, I mean, if they are just starting to get those stories down, great. Get that out first. Then you can say, you know what, you're right. It should be my dog run. But the way we say it, like I run, you run, he runs, and the dog runs. We're going to put a s on the end of that. So helping them recognize, and you do this doing orally. When I introduce the suffix ed, I do it orally first. We do it in a conversation. We talk about that especially because ran and run is an unusual one. It's one that we don't put an ed on, which is a lot easier. Same thing with s. It's a lot easier to put an s on than to have like mouse and mice and tooth and teeth. Those are Old English words. So those are pieces that we're going to have to add in when we can, when it comes up, and when we're structuring, when they're going to need to know those vocabulary and those irregular structures. So I'd say it depends on their grade level, Lorna, and what they're ready for. All right. So let's see if anybody's expanded any of your. I love you guys are giving me great sentences, but I don't see anything expanding on the noun. So I'll expand this one by telling me about my dog, my shaggy dog with the brown and white coat. So now I'm expanding it with an individual word, or I'm expanding it with a phrase. Notice that adjectival phrase, with the brown and white coat, is telling me about that dog. So it's a prepositional phrase, but that's one thing when I oftentimes talk to people and say, what kind of phrase? And they'll say, well, it's a prepositional phrase. I'm like, well, but prepositional phrases always have a job. So what Trisha said, what job? Is it acting as an adjective like this one? That's brown, and with the brown and white coat is telling me about the dog. Or, and we'll show you some other ones. Let's get into some adverbial phrases here that tell where or when or how. So inside the fence tells me where he herds, right? I think I've seen a lot of those come into the chat box. Let's see. By using his trunk is a great adverbial phrase that tells how that elephant drinks. Let's see. High in the sky. That's adverbial that tells me where that eagle loves to soar. Let's see what else has come in. In books. A turtle cannot run, but in books can read. So in books tells me where that turtle cannot, can win races. In the park tells me where that dog ran. On my lap tells me where that kitten is sleeping. So notice how these are all playing the roles of adverbs. They tell me where or how or when. Someone said whenever they eat fish. That's again telling me when. So you can see all of these different. I'm expanding. I'm telling more. So this is something that you can start off simple and then expand as your kids are ready to. So Lauren, some of your younger ones aren't going to be ready to make these expansions, but your older kids could. And maybe if orally we could, you could do the writing for them. You could tell me, where does that dog herd? Inside the fence. How does he herd? With this black and white motion? And when does he do it? Every afternoon. So you can help them see that this is telling me more about what that dog does. And when does he do it? How does he do it? So helping them see those jobs that they play. Okay. So the next thing we're going to get into, I have to get back to this. Well, we're going to get into applying this. I'm going to skip a little bit more in details about the writing piece because that we could get into a lot of examples, but we're going to get into as something called preparation for reading. And because it's 5 o'clock and I really want to focus on this piece, and we can always come back to the others later. Okay. We've got another example. Thank you. This is great. Adding into these. My brown Swiss cow. So we're doing the colors. Notice how I struggle with that because with adjectives, it is hard to, what's the right order? So Lorna, that's another one when you're talking about your tenses. Order of adjectives can be very difficult, especially for second language learners. Is it my Swiss brown cow or is it my brown Swiss cow? Which comes first? So my brown Swiss cow met me at the end of our twisty lane. There's a good adjective there. That is near our farm. So where did he meet him? At the end of our twisty lane. We've got 2 prepositional phrases there. Where is that twisty lane? Near the end of our farm. So we have a clause because that is, you've got a subject, that is your verb. The cow is a brown Swiss. It's a type of cow. Good to know. I didn't know that. But again, see, it's that order of adjectives that can get very complicated. Okay, so we're going to get into the preparing to read. So this steps, I'm actually going to take us to the steps of it first. So this is something we can do right away with our kids, that we can help them as they're about to read something. And then we're going to prepare them by giving them practice with some of the clauses and phrases before they see them in text. So these are the steps to reading them. But I want to show you that I started showing you this one. These are some phrases that I pulled out from a text. Then I also have, these are some phrases that I pulled out from the text. So we're going to do some practice with these, and we're going to see a video of someone doing these steps with her middle school class. But before we do that, I want to talk into what kinds of phrases are we talking about. We've talked a little bit about those noun phrases like the little girl. Adjectival phrases, we've talked a little bit. They talk about, tell me about those nouns. That little girl with a little curl, it tells me about the little girl. The verb phrases is what they did. She sat quietly. Adverbial phrases tell us where, like on the stoop. So these are some examples of what kinds of phrases we're going to be pulling out. So we're going to go back to those steps, and I'm going to demonstrate them with, sometimes I show the phrases, then I show the steps, but I'm going to show you these steps first. I'm going to demonstrate them with volunteers. So for the first one, I'm going to read the phrase, and you to yourself will be rereading each phrase. I won't spend a lot of time on the meaning because you're adults, but with my kids, I might talk about why and how, and we're going to talk about those phrases. Then the second step that I do, I'm going to read the phrase, and actually I have a special tool that I use with my kids here. But you can also use a yardstick, which you'll see in the video. This was a tool one of my colleagues made for me once. See, it's got little handles on it. For underlining the phrase when my kids are up at the board, I have the phrases at the board, maybe on a pocket chart, and they're going to underline the phrase because I'm going to read it for them. They're going to find the phrase and read it for the class. And if they found the right one and read it correctly, then the class rereads. If they didn't, then you're going to stay silent. It's a way to get the engagement for the others. So, for example, if Deborah is reading it and she made a mistake and Trish didn't respond, I'll say, Trish, why didn't you respond? And she said, well, she read this incorrectly. Great catch. Deborah, try rereading that again for us, so that we're making sure we get lots of practice with those phrases. And sometimes these phrases might be difficult for the kids because of individual words that they haven't learned those patterns yet. That's okay. We're going to learn it in a phrase so that when we get to it in the text, we're going to be okay with that. There we go. To number 3, I'm going to give you a clue, and you're going to find the phrase and read it. And then lastly, you're going to read individual phrases. Sometimes it might be from the top to the bottom to the top. You'll see a strategy that in the video of what she does. All right, so modeling. Who would like to, I'll do the number 1 together, and then I'll ask for a volunteer for number 2. So with these phrases, the first, I'm going to get a little pointer here. Spotlight, this will work. This first phrase tells us an amount of time. And notice it's a prepositional phrase. It starts with the preposition for. And when we're talking about 1,000 years, that means it lasted for a long time. So this is a length of time. Because they gave me pain, this is a clause. Remember, we've got a subject here and they and gave. So we have a subject and a verb. Something is causing pain. And we've got this why question here, or this why word. Because they gave me pain tells me why. This phrase, the acts of King Arthur and his noble knights, notice that kind of text. This is called italics. This is something we usually use for book titles or article titles. And you'll notice that we have a lot of words that are capitalized. That's because it's part of a title. So this is the acts of King Arthur and his noble knights. And everyone rereads. Written or printed. Written or printed, everyone rereads. These will be describe perhaps texts or stories, so that because these are describing, these are actually acting as an adjective. Those books were written or printed. These stories were written or printed. Something was written or printed. The greatest single effort. Notice we have a superlative here. That EST, it means it's the most. It is the best. There is nothing bigger or greater than that. So we have greatest and single. That means it's the only one, and the effort is remember how much work it takes. And then lastly, as a child, everyone, the phrase is as a child. That tells us when, maybe when I was little and something happened as a child, or as a child, it tells me about somebody. Okay, so do I have a volunteer who is going to find the phrase as I read them for you? And no, I don't take volunteers with my kids, but I'll take volunteers with you. Somebody who's willing to unmute and find the phrase when I tell you, give you the clue. Go ahead, Sherry, thank you.
I'll do it.
Okay. So, Cherry,
The phrase.
find and read the phrase written or printed.
Okay. The phrase is because they gave me pain.
So, but as a teacher, I'm going to say to you, find and read the phrase. Unless you want to tell me that one, I'll do it. If you want me to be your student.
Right here.
Okay, yes, because they gave me pain. Do you want to give me the next one, or you want me to give them to you?
Preparing to read for 1,000 years because they gave me pain. The acts
Okay.
of King Arthur and his noble king.
All right, I'll find
There's
that one.
another one.
Written or printed.
The greatest single effort as a child.
Okay. These are just random phrases though, Cherry. Okay, so what I would do as a teacher though is I would say find the phrase written or printed, and you would find it and you would read it for the class. Okay?
Okay.
So find the phrase for 1,000 years.
This is a big one though.
So I'm sorry, can I just ask you a question real quick? So are we
Yes.
supposed to just find the phrase for 1,000 years? Is that what you're
Yes.
asking? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so if you were the student up here and we had this, you would find it like this. I know thank you for starring that one. I'm using my little pointer here, whatever pointer you want to do for finding it, like you could stamp it. And you're just finding it because for our kids, that might be hard for them to do. You'll see in the video in a moment that it can be hard for them to do. So you're finding the phrase and you're reading it. That's all you're doing. I'm reading it, you're finding it, and you're rereading it. Deborah, is that a hand up?
Yeah, I can read one for you. Which one
Okay.
would you like me to read?
Deborah, I'm actually going to go to the second, or actually the next stage with you.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you to find and read the phrase that tells me about the stories.
Tells you about the stories.
Mhm.
The stories were written or printed.
Everyone, did she get it right? Those stories were written or printed. Yeah. So she got it. So we would reread it. Trish, what did you think? I noticed you're saying no. Why not?
I thought
Yep.
it was the acts of King Arthur and his noble knights because it was italicized, and I thought it was the actual story itself.
I see. Well, I asked her to tell me about the stories. So, Deborah, why don't you read the one that could be the title of the story?
The acts of King Arthur and his noble knights.
Can you read a phrase that could tell me when it could have happened?
For 1,000 years.
That
Or
one tells me how long it happened, but when did it
Okay.
happen?
as a child.
As a child. Notice how and if I don't give a good clue, I'm going to fix it. So sometimes I notice I said, that one tells me how long. This one could tell me when. Can you find the phrase that tells me why something happened?
Because they gave me pain.
Or why maybe I took I stopped taking my pills, or why I stopped. Any kind of clue that's going to help me get there. Can you find the phrase that tells what it took? We're looking for a noun phrase now.
The greatest single effort.
Excellent. Now notice how I'm going to use with my older kids. I might find the noun phrase or an adjective phrase. With my younger kids, I'm going to describe it a little bit more. You'll give a couple more. I used to give this one for practice, but we'll do talk about these. And you can either put it into the chat box or unmute. What kind of question do you think you could ask to help your kids find these phrases? Let's talk about these, and then we'll show it in action in the video. So like Deborah, I'm going to jump you to, I asked you find the phrase that tells me where, right?
In West Orange, New Jersey.
So there's a where phrase.
You could talk about who, find the phrase of who.
Thomas A. Edison.
Yes, Edison.
Excellent. Keep us going, folks.
When, and go for the dates that are on there.
When did it happen? Now, if they said, actually, that's the only one when I see.
How many?
How many of millions of people? Because I have millions there, perhaps. Was that the one you were thinking?
Yes.
Okay. Keep us going. What did it do? What? Tell me about the actions that have improved their lives. Something has improved the lives, hasn't it? This one could describe a person who was not afraid to try. How did he feel? That's a great one for this one.
And where?
To the Legion of Honor, or in West Orange, New Jersey. And if you said where and you wanted this one and they gave you this one, you could say, okay, you know what, you're right, that does say where. Let's do the other where that actually has two prepositional phrases, or that has two capital letters, or this one could be that ends a sentence. How could we clue in our kids to the last one?
What
Go ahead,
was he known for?
Oh, what was he? He was one of the greatest inventors, wasn't he? Exactly. I love that. He was one of the greatest inventors. Now, the whole point, though, is getting them to practice these again and again. So we've practiced them. Now I'm going to go back and show you those steps. We practiced them when I read them. We practiced them by individual students finding them and reading them, and then we reread them. We practice them by these clues. And lastly, I'll say to someone, it could be Deborah, it could be Laura, anyone, please reread every other one from the top. Or please read every other one from the bottom. Or please read the top three. In the example, the video you're about to watch, she tells him to read, I think it's like the second, the fourth, and the seventh, or something like that. So she knew he needed to work on his auditory memory. So she's helping him expand how many steps he could remember by helping him practice that. So I'm going to jump us to that demonstration of it. I'm going to pause the recording for this. And then you'll have an opportunity to chat with each other about this as well. I'm resuming recording for those of you who are not with us today. We will be going to be talking about the video we saw, as well as in our frame 5 of the Jamboard. You will see some phrases that you can try talking about with your in your groups. So I'm going to pause that recording again, resume the recording. I'm going to take us back to our Jamboard so we can talk about the prompts you had there. We had these ones, we had the steps, and then we have number 7 that we can talk about as a whole group. So let's first talk about the video. I'll actually just put the video prompt up so we can see that as we talk and hear from you all. If you want to talk about the video, if you want to talk about the exercises, I can jump to either one. But who would like to start us off?
I can share from our group. Sorry if I stepped on somebody.
Oh, perfect. Thank you,
Okay.
Erin.
We're all primary, we're all kinder or first grade. So we were really reflecting on the video and how you scale this for the primary grades, how this could be useful. And we were all making connections on ways it could help. And we really worked our way into choosing the phrases carefully. Not just any old phrase, but choosing the ones that are going to generalize for them and help them. And then it really walked into how this helps our comprehension for kids who are still in the decoding phase.
Thank you, Erin, because it helps us move from word by word to phrase by phrase. So instead of reading the pretty dog, the pretty dog. Let's stop there. Thank you. Some other things have come into the chat, and someone else. Stephanie, you want me to go back to the list of steps, or, oh, that was before. The who, the what, the where in writing in kindergarten. Yes. Starting there and teaching reading through writing, helping them then transfer what they're doing in their writing to what they're seeing in their reading. Does anybody want to talk about what you chose for these? How did it go with these? I see some people talking, but they're muted too.
We talked about the video and how it seemed like some of the students were still struggling with their reading, and maybe taking the strips and mixing them, putting the kids in even smaller groups yet, and mixing up the strips and letting them reorganize the strips, discussing it among each other, and or reorganizing the strips, and taking more charge of their own learning and seeing if that helped.
But they are going to need the guidance of someone helping him with, for example, the word people.
Yes.
That was a very hard one, wasn't it?
Yes.
And the idea with this is that we're doing this again and again and again, so that, and in fact, I saw my own students sometimes, if they come to that word, which they would struggle with on its own in text, I pointed to the phrase, and this is something that next week we will actually watch her with a text that has these phrases, and she doesn't do this. And I want to say, but just indicate the phrase. Remember, you read that, because I would do this with my own kids. And if they struggle with that one, people coming to live here, and they struggle with the word people, I'd indicate that phrase. Oh yeah, people coming to live here, because he'd done that unit as a phrase again and again and again through at least these 4 different steps, that it's stuck in his mind as a phrase.
What was confusing us, and we felt it was confusing the students also, was when she'd say line 1, then line 3, then line 7, go back to line 2. And it was like, wait a minute, we can't keep all this straight, the different lines. It was almost like a reading and a math problem at the same time.
And she wouldn't do that with all of her kids. And I never did that with mine, but I thought that she is noticing that he needs to work on that. So she was giving him that auditory memory to building on. What did I say? Second, third, and fourth. And let's practice it so that she's building on his auditory memory. Just like if I had, if I gave you a list of numbers to repeat backwards. So again, that was something that he needed to work on. I didn't do it with all my students, but it's definitely individual students on what their needs are.
Yeah.
You're right, Sherry. It was hard. Stephanie, did you want to contribute?
No, I'm sorry. My computer kicked me out, so I had to get back in.
That's okay. Well, welcome back. Did everyone try this one? Are there any that had struggles with any of these? Go ahead, Danielle.
It wasn't necessarily struggles, but I wanted to say something about the video, was that, and like the wait time that she was giving him at the very end, because some of my students who are dyslexic are needing that time to really sound everything out and make sure they got the right. And then after they've read it, then they're kind of like listening to what the question was, because they were so hyper focused, and then they, to actually get the work done. Yes. And then I had a second question, which is I saw on the Jamboard, and we worked on that in our group. I was wondering if there was a place that you could recommend that would just have some pre-made phrases, so I wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel.
So next time we will be doing some phrases from Florida Center for Reading Research. If you go to their site, and they do have the FCRR activities. Let's go to that. And they also have interventions. So you can choose your grade level. So let's just, kind of do a middle of the road one. Actually, I think the phrases are more the older kids, but let's take a look and see. Phonics, fluency, here we go. Phrases, fluent phrasing, phrase progression, fast phrases, phrase speed practice. So yes, and here's chunked text, again, chunking by phrases instead of looking word by word. In fact, I did pull one up for us to look at. This is from Florida Center for Reading Research, where you'll see there are several different versions of the passage. This one has it with the phrases, with lines between the phrases, and then this one does not. And then this one has some of the phrases as well that I thought we could also look at if we had time to look at. For example, in the massive oven tells me where. Placing the trays tells me what he was doing. This is a long one. Jill could see the baker, but you could say Jill could see. What could she see? The baker. Or who could she see? She could see the baker. What did tell me the next 3 words? Jill smiled. What else did she do? She said yeah and said yes. So it's again building that understanding. But at the same time, once you get used to it and more comfortable, you can just take it from your texts as well. Where did I have those?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Trying to get back to where I was. Oh, I was here with that Florida Center. I'll put this in the chat box for you. Stephanie's saying that they do have a lot of really great activities on those. Okay, we are almost at time, so we have about 10 more minutes. I want to give up the opportunities. We haven't heard from every group, and let's do these together just to see if there's somebody who would like to put it into the chat box, or let's make sure we have a common agreement on this one as well as on frame 7. What questions do they answer? So you might not have gotten to that one, so let's definitely do this one. So Tyrannosaurus Rex, what kind of phrase is that? A lot of what? Yes, Tyrannosaurus is a what?
For what?
Go ahead, Deborah.
Well, I was going to say who, but it is what?
Who or what? It's a noun phrase, yes. So is their best chance.
Mm-hmm.
If I were getting my kids to read that one, I might use the fact that it has a plural pronoun possessive pronoun in there. That there might be a weird one, hard for them. At that time tells us when. With dagger life teeth tells us. Anyone?
How?
Excellent. Keep me going, Allison. In another direction tells me
Where?
could be where, could be how. How did he move in another direction? So some of these can be a little bit. It could be either one. The biggest meat eater could easiest prey be a who? Yes. Who? Yes, it could be. Normally we think of who's as people, but animals, you could say who's his easiest prey, or who or what is his easiest prey. And the last one, the biggest meat eater, would be a noun phrase. It's a what? We're talking about the meat eater. I like how Taryn says a lie. But because you precede it with an remember, if you can precede something with an or the, it's a noun. So that is a noun phrase. All right, let's go to our other one, number 7. Which questions do these answer? So these are all either, I think, if I remember correctly, how or where. So we can add those in. So you can either add them on yourself, or I can as well. So for example, along the Mississippi tells us where. What along without meaning to tells us what?
How?
Thank you. Before the play began?
When?
Mhm.
According to plan.
How?
Oh.
Oops, without meaning to was a how. I need to do that. This one. Thanks, Kelly, for helping us out here, whoever is, I think. All right, well, throughout the entire evening.
When? Or
Beside the flower pot.
where?
By good luck.
How?
Oh.
See, you are getting this. Easy for adults, right? By good luck, we said how. Thank you for whoever else is helping on that. Okay, we have a how here with the rusty hatchet. Where, when, how. We've got two others that, and frankly, above the racket, I've had some people say where, because if they have like maybe a tennis racket on the wall, it is above the racket, or he had to yell above the racket in order to be heard. That might tell him is it a where? Is it a how? I might say call that how. About the head and shoulders, where he was beaten, perhaps, or he had his scarf about his head and shoulders. I mean, that's a weird one. I don't remember where I got those. But again, helping us think about what questions do these answer, because that's really the whole point of syntax, is to answering these questions and helping us understand why these words are put together in the way they are. Okay, so lastly but not leastly, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to reflect and summarize. And I know we're all kind of tired tonight, so let's make sure that we have one last closure, which is to connect in with each other about grammar, and one last word or phrase that you can put into the chat box or onto the Jamboard. What is something that struck into you tonight? The why do we help kids understand grammar, particularly syntax, how these words are put together? And how can we help make sure our kids are successful in their reading, to read phrase by phrase instead of word by word? Thank you, Val, for putting in parts of speech rather than jobs. Parts of speech are, whoops, I did not mean to do that. I clicked the wrong button. I'm trying to, oh, thank you. There we go. Now we erase the other words. Okay. Parts of speech, yes, it does help in a way. They're going to need to learn that, but oh, that could be so much more complicated. Because remember the word rock or jump. Those could be so many different words. Phrasing for fluency, connect those. Who, where, what, when. Thank you, Lorna. Let's have a couple other things come in. And then I have one fun thing to share before we close out. Oh, I'm so glad to hear, Erin, that your curriculum does lead to syntax understanding. I don't think all of them do. Erin, your school uses CKLA, right? And it incorporates some of this stuff?
Yes. But it's not always clear how it's happening, if that makes sense. I don't think we have time to read through every page of every teacher manual that tells you this is why you're doing this 10-minute activity. So this is helpful to say, okay, that's where we're going towards. That's why we're doing these phrases, and it gives me better clarity.
I can appreciate that. I do also have that I can share if anybody's interested. I said I used to put these posters on the wall, so I can pull up the posters that I used to use for my grammar parts of speech. That was before I learned to call them roles or jobs. But nonetheless, it's still answering those kinds of questions. I'm looking for it here. It's under syntax. Give me a second. And here there, I call them grammar posters, but let me resume the page. And if you want, I can share in. I don't remember whether I've made these ADA compliant or not, but let me show you what these look like. And I'll pull up, I'll open up the noun one, for example. And so I would just put these on regular piece of paper. I had them on my wall, and I definitely had my green before my red, because remember the rules of the road, we start with green and end with red. So you can see here then the green, a noun, answers are who or what, and I have a few examples. I would also then have the red, the adjectives and articles would come beforehand. The green would come with it. The conjunctions, I wouldn't put yellow on white. That's hard to read. I would usually change it to black. And put it onto a yellow piece of paper. But you can see how each one, it tells what it does. In this case, for adverb, it's just describing the verb. It's telling me, and on our adverbs, it answers where, when, how much, and so some examples there as well. So if anybody wants those, you can put them into your name into the chat box. And like I said, I do have one fun thing to add in before we close out. And this was something I found as I was preparing one of these classes one day, and I thought this is fun because our grammar is so complex, isn't it? So if you want those posters, please put your email into the chat, and I'll add it on before closing up. So we'll take a look at this. The English where we can put the word only anywhere in that sentence. Only she told him that she loved him. She only told him that she loved him. She told only him that she loved him. She told him only that she loved him. She told him that only she loved him. Notice how the difference in the changes. She told him that she only loved him. She told him that she loved only him. She told him that she loved him only. Notice how we can change that up. And then, of course, adding on to where the weather words are nouns or verbs. Minute and minute shouldn't be spelled the same. I'm not content with its content. I object to that object. I need to read what I read again. Excuse me, but there's no excuse for this. And someone should wind this post up and throw it in the wind. Our language is very complex, isn't it? So we'll stop making things even more complex for our kids, but find ways to help unlock it, and little by little. So I know we've been doing a lot over these past sessions, but with your kids, you do little by little. You start small and we build to the more complexity. So I'm going to let you out early this week because I'm also feeling a little bit close on or scratchy on the throat. But we will see you next Tuesday back for our last session, text comprehension and written expression. And do keep in mind, if there's anything you want to come with, questions, practices, things that you've thought, if someone says they need the attendance again, let me grab it. Manslaughter or man's laughter, I like that as well. Let me grab the attendance link for those of you who came in after I put it in before for you. All right, there you go. And of course, you all know that you have my contact reference and classes. I'll put that up for you as well as the resources, both the handouts and the tinyurl.com explicit literacy instruction, which just has all the stuff I collect for, when I find free resources, I try to put them in there for you. So thank you. Have a great night. And I'm going to be leaving this open so I can get all those emails before closing out. So if there's anybody who has any other questions, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that for you. I'm here for a few more minutes, but I meant to stop the recording. There we go.